Good morning. Today is February the 5th, 2026. It's 11:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, the Elohim of the Bible. We're going to cover some stuff today, and first off, we will cover the dinner plans as always. So I actually changed it up a little bit. Last night I had the menu kind of planned already, and I was gonna do brown sugar meatloaf, but because of the day, it's a little overcast, kind of rainy, a little damp, cold. So Asherah wanted to do more of a crock pot meal, so I ended up doing the homemade beef stroganoff. But I will share the recipe also for the meatloaf and the beef stroganoff. So the meatloaf I was going to do, which now I'll probably do that on Saturday. It consists of ketchup and brown sugar, 1 cup equal parts off to the side for the topper. 2 eggs, a French onion dip mix, so you can make little French onion packet. Italian breadcrumbs, 1 cup of milk, and then I usually pair the meatloaf with green beans and carrots with mashed potatoes, and then a little slice of bread. Today, obviously that's changed. Now we're doing the homemade beef stroganoff. That is a very easy one as well. Same ground beef 90-10, so it's a leaner cut, comes out nicely. But the crock pot, 2 cans, golden mushroom soup, a little bit of onion powder, a little bit of garlic powder, usually one tablespoon each, a tablespoon of paprika, the 2 cans of mushrooms, or 2 cans of golden mushroom soup, and then 4 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. And then I put it all in the crock pot. I stir it really good. Then I add the meat. Then I take the wooden spoon and almost knead it. So I break all the meat up into almost like a meat paste until it looks almost like a raw meat, soupy, kind of thicky, watery thing. And then put the lid down, 8 hours on low, and then there we go. We have making sure there wasn't an ant in my coffee. When it gets cold, we get ants in the house, and they love to come into the coffee. Extra protein. So anyway, that'll be dinner. And then I will do that with a Texas toast, not garlic. I think I'm going to do the Texas toast 5 cheese tonight. So, and another shout out to Aldi. I mean, we get our bread sides at Aldi. They have the garlic knots in the bag. You just put them in the oven in the bag. The garlic knots come out good. That's good for a lot of pastas, so like spaghetti, lasagna, Alfredo. I usually do the garlic knots or the breadsticks. And then for things like the meatloaf or the stroganoff, I like to use the Texas toast, either the 5 cheese or the garlic. But Aldi constantly has them for about $2.50 a box. And I've done a comparison between the Aldi brand, I think it's like Mimi or Mama Cece's, versus like the big box brand, right, that you find in like Publix. I've done a side-by-side like comparison, and the Aldi ones just come out better, especially with the cheese ones, right? Because in the Aldi, the cheese ones, like the cheese is firmly on the Texas toast, right? They're frozen. Versus like it's the New York brand garlic toast and stuff, and I've tried different ones, but every time I've gotten the cheese, most of the cheese ends up in the bottom of the bag, and I don't think it cooks very well, to be honest. So again, another win for Aldi. Anyway, so moving on, I'm gonna do kind of the housekeeping stuff first today, and then I will get into a bit of I don't even know if I'd call it a teaching, more or less just kind of where I stand on progressive Christian churches. But before we go into that, I want to say great job to Jeopardy's tournament of Champions winner last night to Paolo. Great job. An absolute domination. You dominated in all 3 rounds in a landslide victory. So truly, good luck, and I will be watching your performance in the Masters. And yeah, so truly, good luck. Well done. Jeopardy is one of me and Asher's like very common shows. So we tend to, she likes more Wheel of Fortune. I mean, she's a like supervisor, manager of like content, so she's a writer essentially. But anyway, so she's good with words, and I like the Jeopardy mainly because I think it's really interesting, the categories, but it really gets to profile like human intelligence, which to me is very important. Because, you know, human intelligence is great, especially when humanity itself as a species can view itself as truly one organism working to achieve the highest purposes and the highest goals possible. And I, as Elohim, that means God for those that do not know. And again, I am Yahweh, who is the God of the Bible, and I am the God of the Bible in the flesh. And getting my humans up to snuff, highly educated, highly knowledgeable, is a big prerogative of mine, outside of cleaning up the righteousness. So again, great job to Paolo. My next thank you goes out to Mike Johnson. You are exercising the Isle of Diplomacy. And even when it seems daunting and impossible, you still put in the work. So the fruits of your labor shall be seen and paid for. So truly, Mike, keep up the good work. You know, I see what you're doing when no one else does. So keep up the good work. I appreciate it. Next one is Pope Leo. So in trying to extend my own olive branch, you know, what are your thoughts? So should we watch the Turning Point USA halftime show? So I would like to know. I'd like to know, Pope Leo, if you plan on watching the alternative halftime show. Asherah is voting yes. I am leaning voting yes. But no matter what, I would just ask Pope Leo that I'd only ask that you, of all people, please avoid what is being presented on the main stage, you know, that what is being presented. So I hope you at least, you know, could stand in solidarity with me as the actual God from the Bible, and obviously as the living God on earth as Christ. I would appreciate the solidarity. And again, I would like to try to put down a lot of the fire, right? I'd like to tamper that down, and I would like to really start getting, like, truly my churches close with me. And howbeit there may be issues that we may not come to a full conclusion on, at least right now. But I believe the first step is making peace. And that's what I would like to do. I truly do not have malice in my heart for any people. I wouldn't even call it malice. I would have internal irritation with certain behaviors that when I, as the Heavenly Father, am trying to correct, I would like my churches to back my play. I would like my churches to back my play. Because I get it. For over 2,000 years, the church has had nothing but, you know, human leaders, and they have done the best they could with trying to keep with morality and ethical principles. My frustration with the New Testament is it is actually not even reflecting on the purpose of righteousness and the purpose of staying the course when it is hard, and then the importance of how civilization can endure essentially indefinitely as long as we are adhering to obedience to biblical principles and commands. And then me as God, as Yahweh on earth, I don't want to get into confrontations with the very creatures in which inhabit the earth. So that's kind of my point, right? Is I do know the correct courses of action, and then I do see things truly as the creator, because I am, like, that is who I am, full and full. So it's really hard for me to, it's hard for me to be very compassionate towards those that are disobedient to biblical principle, right? And do not have the backbone to stand up. So overall, Pope Leo, I'd like to know if you plan on watching the Super Bowl halftime show, or the Turning Point USA alternative halftime show. Because either way, again, my request is to not participate into the main one. So I'll be listening for your answer. Next, Stacklebeck. So it is good to see you firmly on the team, and it is good to see that your program is growing. I knew it would. You're not only well spoken, but you're well researched, you're highly educated, and people do want to know what you have to say. You do breakdowns of international news quite well. So I do hope to see your program continue to grow. It has my blessing, and I would only suggest advice going forward is keep truth as your compass, and you will know biblical promises as confirmed promises. So, stay the course, Stacklebeck. And as you say, and as Pastor Peter says, never hold your peace. I like that. And last but not least, President Trump. So, of course, I am with you. My spirit monitors many folks that are in the White House, because these are important times right now. As much as I would love to have a temple in America to go to inhabit with the Holy Family, there's nothing more than I'd like to get to those days that America is cleaned up, the world is at peace, people are on purpose, and then I can begin focusing my time and attention to my church directly, and then have a firm foundation, for people obviously to come to pilgrimage, but right here in America. But we're not there yet. So that's why my spirit and the flesh combined, I'm working diligently with you, President Trump, and your cabinet. And I am trying to do it unbiasedly. I'm trying to do it truly just sticking to my purpose, trying to be helpful, not hurtful. So I am with you, right? And obviously, when you're in Mar-a-Lago, I'm just a few hundred miles away. So a lot of my time working with you, President Trump, is trying to guard your path, provide divine wisdom that obviously you can take and apply, but to keep you clear of any wrongs is also another one, right? I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. So stay on par with me, your Elohim, and the kingdom promises shall you see and partake in. And do not worry about salvation, because I've already covered that. So instead, you need to focus on my guidances for you, and all will be well with you, both now and when you transition into the heavenly kingdom above. So, have no worry about those things. Like I say, we are going to get through this as Team America, and I would love to accomplish most of these things under your presidency, because I know the future for America is not only going to be bright, but it is going to be a dawn truly of the new earth era. And one of my goals is obviously to be able to have clouds of witnesses, millions of witnesses, so they too can feel confident that me as Elohim can effectively and efficiently work with presidents, right? Because ongoing, my presence upon the earth is never going to be gone. I will remain with my people indefinitely, upstairs and down here. So my ability to work, essentially my will through whatever president is elected, is hugely important. So keep moving in the right direction. I would love to see the Iran situation be truly taken care of, be truly cured of the ailments that it's causing the free and modern world. Because unfortunately, when we have 50 plus years of overstress on a human population, it actually begins to change human emotion, human mental ability, fortitude, and unfortunately, you end up with a lowly type of people, right? And when I mean lowly, that, right, they have, like jihadists, for example, right? They have struggled with keeping up with the modern world. They've struggled with their own belief systems. They've struggled with their own spirituality. So a lot of these people have held on to untruths. They've held on to, unfortunately, satanic ideals. And that can't stand. I don't need to convince, anybody of these things. These are self-evident. And also it says in some of the American doctrines that these things are self-evident, right? America is a land of laws. The laws are what I handed down to Moshe. These exact same patterns are how we can put guardrails in place. And the good news is, once we can put guardrails in place, meaning society as a whole, human beings as a whole, have a solid understanding of what their purpose is being a human being, what their destination is, as long as they fulfill the steward side and they're obedient to righteousness. They're quick to repent and to clean up behavior and never do it again. But knowing they can call on my name whenever they need assistance getting through a sin, and then knowing that the true salvation of mankind, it falls under obedience to goodness, obedience to the law. So, again, I'm happy with most of the progress, and, there's no reason why we're not going to continue on that level of progress. So, I believe I got all of the housekeeping things out of the way. Okay, so what time is it? Just flipped to 18 minutes so far, about 11:30. Okay, I think I'm gonna take a quick 5 here, and then I'm gonna go into one of the, how would you say it? Right? Kind of like a briar in your shoe. Like if you've ever mowed the yard and you walk through a briar patch and it gets stuck on your socks, and then it starts to work itself down, like right there on the tender part of your foot, that it just smarts, it hurts. That's how I feel about a lot of the progressive Christianity. Because Christianity, when I look at certain areas, I'm overly pleased. This is the hard part about when it comes to me as Elohim working directly with my churches. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take a 5. Let me regroup, use the restroom, tidy up, and then I will come back and we'll talk about kind of some of the more focused issues, right, that I have with the church in general. So, okay, hold tight. Okay, we're back. So we're gonna go over. I already closed it now, but make a long story short. All right. Well, I think that'll be too much of a distraction. So the progressive Christian churches, progressive Christianity is not real. or is it endorsed by me? No. Compassion is truth, and then the willingness to take correction and apply it to the world is the purpose. A kumbaya type of church has really its own agenda, its own propaganda, and as the current state of the world is proving day in, day out, that it leads to all bleeding hearts and no smarts, which is detrimental to me, Elohim, because this goes back to what I call fallen angel doctrine, which is do thou wilt. And understand that the fallen angels were motivated by a false sense of love. They were motivated to go into human women and produce offspring, which they should never have taken human women to begin with, but then they had offspring. And this goes against what my original commands were and why. As I explained to the fallen angels before the rebellion, was that they are to be like a parental figure to humanity. Thus, it would be against the universal law to be of a higher being with higher purposes, higher intellect, and also, like, the fallen angels had knowledge that humanity was not in a position to receive yet. That's like you love your toddler and then you give them a loaded .357 Magnum. That's not love. That is a disaster waiting to happen. And by knowing good and well that the consequences of these things could be disastrous, and doing it anyway for the sake of love is not love. You see, that is truly the root of selfishness. That is the root of doing thou own will, not my will. And then, furthering my problem with progressive Christianity, is they have misinterpreted even the teachings that I as Yahweh gave through Yeshua. They were not only not recorded properly, but then they have been misconstrued even further. So as I've mentioned this several times, the woman who was caught in the act of fornicating was brought before the Pharisees. Now, progressive Christianity takes that as that they are siding with the sinner over the Pharisee. That's the wrong interpretation. The correct interpretation was she came before Pharisees, and Yeshua looked up at them and said, okay, whoever of you is clean, you cast the first stone. None of them were clean. None of them were sin-free. They were all, in some category, sinful. So the purpose of that is, if one is essentially dirty and has skeletons in their closet, they don't have any box to stand on to correct another's wrongs. That would be like someone in active addiction counseling with someone in active addiction. Neither one of you have solved the problem of your addiction, thus you would need a sober mind to give you correction. And this is like to Yeshua's point back in the day, that he is laying down the commandments as I told him to, and he is instructing righteousness, and then all too often people try to misinterpret these things as, so I'm free to do whatever I want. Like, I'm free from the law. I'm like, this is truly the human syndrome. This is something that humanity does really without even understanding what they do. They know not what they do. That also applies to this. Is the Jews were essentially, right, they wanted to get rid of Yeshua anyway, because he was a pain in their ass, but they know not what they do, right? Because the Jews felt that they were being loyal to me, Elohim Yahweh, by essentially getting rid of what they considered a false prophet, or somebody who was blaspheming the name of the actual creator, who is I, without taking the time to look at, a poor boy from Nazareth, and instead of them saying, hey, I could learn from this kid in rags, instead of doing that, right, they continue on the same song and dance. They continued on to behave badly in the dark and then look great in the light. And that's where we again have fundamental problems. I, as Elohim, look at righteousness, godliness, godly living, good decisions, making the right choices, not leaning into sin, not being swayed by political reasons, not trying to garner the fame or attention of others, not doing stuff. Like, the whole point that I brought this up was there was an article about some catchy Christian progressive pastor who keeps putting, like, very I don't even know what you would call them, but they're sayings, you know, like, Jesus loved universal health care, be like Jesus. Well, again, the name Jesus is a fugazi, but forgetting all that, you're trying to politicize something that actually is not a biblical principle, right? Because I refer back to each must carry their own load, and each must, right, whatever purpose you were given by me from heaven, that is what your, essentially your earth job is, right? So if you are teaching people, right, progressive principles, then you are not teaching them biblical principles. Because biblical principles tells you that there may be troubling times, and it is telling you that you are to be an endurer, an overcomer. You are to accept whatever circumstances you're given, and not only be better for it, but how do you spread the way you solved problems unto others. So if you've successfully solved a problem using biblical principle, using very strong moral direction, right, using your righteousness, truth, and your righteousness in one accord, then you will have actually solved the problem correctly. Many times in this day and age, especially, humans are coming to a conclusion that they favor, but they actually did not solve the problem, nor did they solve it through biblical principle. So, you know, thus, another one of the signs said, you know, thank God that she made you. You know, I don't know really how to take that, because my wife is Asherah. That is my actual goddess, as a spirit, and very ancient spirit, you know, virtually what I would consider my only equal, in terms of, like, she's my partner in heaven and my partner on earth, you know, and she's obviously my helper, right? As I instruct man, you are to have a female to be your helper, and then each of you have a 50% share in the home and the children, a 50% share in all the problems, but all the benefits, right? So together you make 100%. That's the biblical principle, and that is why, obviously, I cannot bless or condone LGBTQ behavior. And as Elohim, I know how I've created humanity, but I also know what exists in the seeds that have stemmed from the fallen angels, or those that have corrupted the purity of humanity. And that's where it gets tricky, because I understand the human prerogative and the wanting, this needing to feel like you are being a good shepherd by welcoming all people. Well, again, we wouldn't want to go and feed our sheep out in the middle of the wilderness, because guess who's also going to smell the food? The wolves. And then we are actually not being just to our sheep, because the wolves inevitably come and they will pick off our sheep one by one. This goes back to this whole, you know, again, the salvation has nothing to do with a blood libel. That is an archaic, tribalistic explanation that now I think we can update this to: there will not be any bloodshed when people obey the commandments. That's why that's the root of truth, of goodness, of righteousness. That is the pillars of humanity. That is the only way humankind survives. And those 10 laws are just the basic ones. Those are the ones you need to know. Before you know your first words, you should be knowing those commandments, are right therein. Like, that's how important they are. Because that's going to ensure that your baseline is not going to be, like, out of the purview of heaven, right? If you're at least walking the 10 commandments, that means that you're moldable, you're helpable, you essentially, right, you're putting forth enough effort that would beckon heavenly assistance by me or my angels. So by being accepting, right, thus is where, like, we have an issue, because everyone is welcome, but unless people are willing to change their sinful ways, they are not welcome to stay. Do you see? So another misconception about Yeshua, Jesus, was that when he would be teaching out in the field, right, many people would gather. And in the truth, he would be very friendly, welcoming all people. But then when he began teaching, and he would teach 100% of the time about righteousness, about avoidance of sin, and actually very over the top, more than the Pharisees. The Pharisees were very much into religion, where they wanted to, you know, they wanted the breastplates of Aaron, and they wanted all these artifacts in the temple, and they wanted, like, essentially what looks like holiness, but is really devoid of anything that has to do with me, Yahweh, Elohim. And I find the Christian church is doing the exact same thing, right? They're taking the Greek-Roman Jesus, which really all the stories, they're reminiscent of the Dionysus, which was a French European deity of essentially partying and wine, right? Where free love, free booze, like do as you will, and that's what it means. So the fallen angels have tried very, very hard to try, like, I've made this parable, right? Let's say I'm Burger King, the fallen angels are McDonald's. I come out with a chicken sandwich, McDonald's comes out with one. I run a 5-piece chicken tender special, they're going to run a 5-piece chicken tender special. Like, everything I do, they're one way or another, they're mimicking that. But only the wise of the wise, only those on the narrow are going to be able to not go to that drive-through, right? They're not going to that place because they're like, no, I know Elohim said, and this is what he stands by. We're sticking over here, right? And, you know, the separation of the chaff from the wheat, right? I, as God, look at humanity as a species that is intermixed with good people, truly bad people, and we really need to flip the paradigm. But it doesn't help me when I have 50% of good people, but those 50% of good people are so accepting and so, like truly progressive, right? Progressive is not progressive, it's actually degression, really, is the proper word, not progression, regression. It is regression. And then, of course, regression, it ends up where, I see it all the time in the world, right? And Christians walking around with wicked, shirts, and then their excuse is, well, it's just a show. No, that's a symbol. That is a declaration. That is essentially a piece of who you are. You are wearing a label, and you're labeling yourself wicked. And if you think it's any kind of funny, right, then we have another problem, right? Because then you are, we're confusing people. Progressive Christianity has been for hundreds of years now, confusing people, saying, you don't have to worry about sin. You don't have to worry about even doing the right thing because you have the blood of Jesus. That, it's hard to even say that, but that to me is like a declaration of war against me, Yahweh Elohim. That is literally like I am looking at a sheep or a wolf in sheep's clothing, and either they don't know what they do, they know not what they do, because if they really knew how upset it made me, and then like all the events that follow, like it's not good, right? So either they know not what they do, or if they know what they do, then they are really insidious, right? They are a seed of Satan. They are truly of the adversarial seed, which is adversarial to humankind, right? Because these people are truly trying to get you do whatever you want, right? Because I could go on forever with examples, but you know, because in my opinion, the regressive Christianity, right, you guys are all about like trying to come off as sympathetic or empathetic or overly loving, overly caring. This is what Jesus would want us to do, and it's completely false, and it's infuriating. All right. So I don't know if she's off a meeting or not. But anyway, so again, this is just going back to doing things the right way. You know, if you have, you know, a kid who's failing at school, and then he comes home and, you know, the parents just like, hey, don't you worry about that schooling. Hey, I graduated, so you don't have to worry about it. Like, that makes no sense when you look at how people say they're saved by my blood or by the blood of Jesus or whatever. Like, you can understand that. That would be like saying, like, the father going, hey, little Johnny, you don't have to worry about those grades because I graduated. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Just because the father graduated doesn't mean that, like, the son doesn't have to. The son needs to go through his curriculum as well, and hopefully the father is encouraging his son to be better than he is. So the righteous thing to do is the son's failing, and the son comes home, and the father goes, okay, guess what? You can do hard things. This might be a challenge, but you're an overcomer, right? Because your path, you're destined to be smart, not just smarter, but I want to see to it that you're going to be better than I did. I made it 50% in my life. You as my son, I want you to go all the way to 100. And then if that mindset is what carries over, then that son one day has kids. And then he's going to look at it the same way. And when his son comes home and his son's like, Dad, I'm not doing so good. Then the son who made it 100 is going to tell his son, hey, you can do hard things. You're an overcomer. I did it, so can you. And then that son is going to reach higher than his father. And if we look at this as the building blocks of life, even through my creation, every time they go a notch up, it is actually improving the human experience, and it is becoming a better and better steward of the creation, and thus a more purpose, a greater purpose in heaven. And then the circle actually starts to move, like the big wheel begins to move in the right direction. When we have the progressive Christian view, and it's, hey, little Johnny, don't worry about, you know what, we only have to worry about cursive. You know what, actually, I think everyone should just get an A. Right? You showed up, right? You don't have to worry about sin because you're covered by Jesus. You don't have to worry about being smart because, like, you have computers. Like, let's just go get a cappuccino and have a good day. Like, right? As the father, that, like, I've made this before, right? That's like, I feel like I'm the cat going into a bathtub. Like, I don't even want to even be associated with those types of people because they do not represent me. And frankly, if those are the kinds of messages even you're getting, and I have like the most generic like Bible you can find to make sure that I at least can understand what my churches are talking about, you know, that's what I mean. But there's so many progressive Christian churches that it blows my mind because, like, nothing about me is Yahweh and nothing about Yeshua is actually, like, in any way liberal or progressive. Like, that, I don't know how they managed to reach that far into twisting narratives, but they did. And that is, again, where one of my pinch points with the Roman Catholic Church is because the original doctrine that was in Hebrew, that was actually things Yeshua taught about, real people that were being, and this is another thing, right? Yeshua was helping people not by laying hands and healing people. He was helping people by correcting their sin. And guess what? When they stopped doing the sin, they stopped receiving the penalty of sin, and thus they became free. Then he teaches, follow me, walk after me. You're not only going to please the Father, right? But you're going to fulfill all these great and mighty things that the Bible promises you're going to get, the milestones and so on and so forth. That never comes from like the acceptance of LGBTQ. That's not what that means. Those people are welcome when they want to change. So my churches turn no one away when they are ready for change. But it is not our job or your job, especially not your job, to sit there and just usher in people, right, because they're going to put a dime in that plate. I would rather see your church go belly up and then come to me in prayer and say, Father, I did what you said. My church went belly up. I would say, you know what you did? You made an investment with the real God of the Bible, Yahweh, who is I. And then I would say, because you passed your test of righteousness, now I'm going to turn over a flock that I can trust in your hands. So many of you right now have small flocks that you're tending, and you're never going to grow them because you're not obeying the righteousness that I want. Humans have another problem. You all want to be sovereign in your own right. Well, that's your free will. But remember, if we're sitting on a stagecoach with the horses in front of us, as God, I'm in that seat with you on that stagecoach. The human can hold the reins of those horses, right? And as Elohim, I'm going to sit next to you, and I'm not even going to say a peep. I'll let you take us wherever you're going to take us. And a lot of times, they end up in non-good places. But only when you look over and then go, hey, God, am I in the right place? I'm going to say, actually, you missed a few turns down there. Would you mind handing me the reins? Then that human should say, Father, I am going to give it to you. I'm going to just listen to the directions. And then I, as God, say, okay, now watch me. You see this rock? Well, we don't want to hit it. We're going to go left. You see this ravine? We're going to go here. You see this mountain? I'm planning that path. I'm using the reins, and that person is trying to study, follow, and obey. Right? Versus progressive Christianity. They don't even have me in the stagecoach. They left me at the station. That progressive Christian is sitting there with one of their hopeless cases, while that progressive Christian is just, hey, we don't really know where we're going because we've kind of made most of this stuff up, but we're at least together. And it's like, okay, well, you're probably gonna like go over a cliff. Like, that's not a good look on you. But that's the truth, right? That's the truth. And that's also why here's another detriment to the progressive Christian narrative. These people come in the door because they're like, okay, I think I'm broken, or I think of this. And then the first thing they hear is the pastor going, you're not broken. The power and love of Jesus Christ. That blood is going to save you today. Once your soul is saved, you are in the graces of God. And I don't know what kind of spiel y'all have, but it sounds hokey. And most of it's not real. But the problem is that person is coming for help. They're coming for help. And they're not getting any help. They're not getting any guidance to live right. They're not getting a strong rebuke saying where that pastor should be sinless, sober-minded, and say, okay, let's use Jelly Roll. He's a good example because, obviously his transformation's been huge. Now he's doing righteousness. But let's say that Jelly Roll, 20 years ago, walked into the church of me, Yahweh. Jelly Roll comes in. I'm going to say, okay, how can I help you? And he says, I'm lost. I'm messed up. I got all these problems. Okay. Are you at a point that you feel that you're broken enough? Are you truly done with that stuff? And if he's like, well, no, I don't know how to stop, right? Well, then I would probably direct him to substance abuse counseling first. I'm saying if it's a physical problem. But let's say that we're past that. So then it's going to be an inventory of sin. It is a conversation between me and that human being, and it's going to be, okay, let's go back as far as you can remember. When did you do your first wrong? When did you do your first naughty? Let's talk about it. What did you think of? How did it make you feel? What types of naughties do you do on a regular, or what kind have you done accidentally? I'm digging into these cases like a doctor is digging into a patient. And then as I'm understanding this person, I begin to find roots. Okay, so Jelly Roll, this trauma happened, which is what led to drugs. This situation happened is what led to drinking. This ambition is what led you over here. And I'm going through the whole narrative. And then I go, here's your salvation plan. Abstain from those little white lies that you thought were okay, because they're not. So we're going to repent of that, clean that up, and don't do that again, right? No more fleshly, lustly intercourse, right? We want to make sure that we find a significant other, we get married, and then you have the joys of being a parent by giving a child a good life. So my point is, I'm going to go through each of these things, right? And it doesn't matter, like, whatever, how bad the sin could be, right? If it is an LGBTQ, let's say it's a transgender, it doesn't matter. You got to walk through those things. That is the job of a pastor. That is the job of a pastor. So when a pastor is opening his doors, welcoming anybody and everybody in just to hear a message, and then the pastor is trying to write messages so neutrally that people like Jelly Roll, before his transformation, guess what? You don't see them after a couple of visits, because they're back out in the world, they're doing sin, because the only message they got was, okay, I wear a crucifix, I'm saved. I profess Jesus is Lord, and I'm somehow saved. And again, that's a false name, right? If you were calling upon my name, my real name, which is Yahweh, or Yahuwah, then, maybe there would be a supernatural intervention in churches. But my point is, right, if most, if not all, my Christian churches are still refusing to tell the truth, do you see where we're having a fundamental problem? How can the largest footprint of religion on this planet, my planet, that I created, be so, just apprehensive to tell the truth? That's a problem for me as Elohim. Because for you to know me as I am and truly exist and am on earth, you have to be truthful. Right? That starts with my name. That starts with being able to pray, repent, and to actually do and carry out religious services in truth. Because if you don't, you're doing it for nothing. Which is, again, an irritating factor that actual churches that I have worked with online over the last 4 years have been so hesitant when I come around. And then my question back is, why in the world would you be so hesitant when the actual God in which you are praying, honoring, and worship comes knocking on your door? That doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. Where's the logic, right? Unless you have something to hide. And again, most people are using false names with confidence, which they know makes me mad, so they hide. People are teaching against what I actually teach. And at the end of the day, right, if I don't have a teachable human or a teachable human population, then that's where, as God, I look at a species, let's say my bees. I love my bees. But let's say one day, they're like, yeah, well, we're done making honey. Okay. So what's your next move? We don't know. We're going to go hang out in a tree. Okay. How is that actually going to benefit the creation? Though you were here because this is a crucial job I need you to perform. He's like, I'm good. I'm cool. I'm going to go hang out here with my progressive Christian friends, and we're going to sit here and, BS around and talk about how we're saved. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to do anything for creation. We're just waiting to die to go to heaven. It's like, okay, B, Did you not know that you're going to be making pollen, or you're going to be making honey in heaven? Did that ever occur to you? Did it ever occur to you that by literally living on this beautiful creation, right, you have a actual born job that you don't get human money for, but you still have a purpose to fulfill, and you're refusing to do that? You see how frustrating this is when I'm comparing it to bees, but in reality, this is like a big part of the Christian church. So I need righteousness to get back into the church. Like, I need biblical, obedient people. Being a set-apart people is hugely important. Now, I feel like I've given Christians, I know I joke and say it, but I've given Christians the pouchy. I've given you pouchy. Right? I've given you the commandments. I've given you the miracles. I've given you the acts of God. I have given you a real deal prophets. I have given you like a book that, even to my own amazement, has and at least there's a remnant. I mean, it's a bloated remnant, but it's at least a remnant of truth that has been handed down for almost 4,000 years. That's a human achievement that is really interesting, right? And that's what I mean is, you don't know me other than the camera here, because when I go upstairs, creation is for me like it's a system of operations. It is a laws of physics, and it is me looking at a species and going, okay, I'm gonna have to help this species make a transition because I'm about to modify. And that's where I've made this point. You have like thousands of different categories and subspecies of actually one kind. But all right, she's ready for a break. We'll take 5 and then we will return. All right, and we are back. Don't know if I'll get through the rest of the teaching before I gotta leave for kid pickup or not, but we'll see. So continuing on the progressive Christianity. So another one of the billboards from this pastor's church, and again, right, they're trying to be in a way controversial, or they're trying to paint false narratives, because understand that Yeshua was essentially an extension of me. So when you're talking to me, being taught by me, I am the creator in the flesh. I taught through Yeshua. My teachings and his teachings were one-to-one. The teachings of the modern church, the progressive church at least, is not a reflection of either teaching. So then I, as Elohim, look at it and go, well, what are they teaching? Oh, they're teaching from their own heart. They're teaching because, this is what I mean, humans with an emotional connection to all these things, it's so easy to make the wrong decision. Just like when Eve was tempted by the fruit, right? Well, she gave into it and she's like, I'm good. So she wanted to convince Adam that it was good, even though it was a direct disobedience to me. Do you see how that's one-to-one? This is, I'm telling the world, like, I need to get everyone back to their room. America's where I'm starting, because Israel don't listen to me still. 3,800 years in the making, and Israel still doesn't listen to me. Still struggles with me. Still wrestles with me. So that's fine. I'll move on to Christendom, because you're both my religion, full and full. There is no breakage. But again, right, one of the billboards in this progressive church said something to the tune of, I'm not sure if I covered it, but it was like, thank God she had you, right? And as I said, right, I don't know, I feel mixed about that, because my Asherah is my heavenly and earthly equal. So if that's a nod to her, I guess that's okay. But I think that without elaborating on that, that can be misleading. Do you see how that can be misleading to my, sovereign, religions, should be sovereign religions that are at least following an assembled direction that I am approving or directing? That's going against it, right? That's putting in the minds of unknowers, unbelievers, or not familiar with me or anything, right? That's giving them a false understanding of what Christianity is, and that's a problem. So mixed messaging is another problem with progressive Christianity. So I don't appreciate that. And then also saying that, I don't know, something about a lot of these signs too were about like illegal aliens, and that Jesus did not, something about illegals, or no human on earth is illegal. Well, false. Because if you were reading the Bible and you understood that why I as Elohim had to take Hosea and essentially power him up, right, to lead after Moshe, but mainly into the Joshua wars, right? And then why was that, right? Because there were unbargainable barbarians that were giants. The giants had all but ill intent for normal humanity. The giants were in no way ever going to adapt to a modern civilization, because that's just not who they were, why they were built. And again, they were a puzzle. They're like an extra puzzle piece that doesn't fit into the picture. I, as Elohim, deal in the currencies of life and death. What may be scary to humanity does not, in any shape or form, impact me as Elohim. Okay? That would be like, I only want to use that kind of parable because I think it comes off kind of weird. But I don't mind using parables that may come off as intense or harsh or whatever, because the functionality, I think, still remains. Right? And the thing is, the illegal equation is there is a sovereign land. Right? Just like when Joshua was cleaning the giants out of Canaan and getting rid of these, again, tribes in those areas. They were children, they were sacrificing children. They had no code of ethics. So one could steal from this tent on a Monday, then the tent that he stole from was stealing it back. And you know what I mean? Like, we just had all these constant issues, right? Somebody was emotionally upset, and they go, like when Cain murdered Abel. Like, I'm saying, all these things happen truly from a progressive type of mindset. It's kind of flabbergasting to me as Elohim that modern humans haven't really put the puzzle pieces together. And it's kind of like, guys, these things are all self-evident. The destruction of humanity is directly tied to sinful behavior. I, as Elohim, do not accept sinful behavior. Further, I do not accept, or do I not agree or condone or endorse churches that are telling parishioners that they don't have to be obedient to the law. They don't have to be commandment minded. They don't have to be a good steward anymore, because the blood of Jesus has removed them from the game. Or that's what I mean. That's insanity. That's the father telling his first grader, son, you don't have to worry about being good in school. I was good in school for you. You don't have to be good. Son comes home and he's like, Dad, I'm struggling in this, this category in school. Dad's like, don't worry about it. Just go throw that away. You don't need that. I've already went to school for you, son. The kid's probably going to be happy, right? The kid's probably like, oh, heck yeah, Dad, you're my savior. I don't ever have to do math again. Like, praise Dad. And the human syndrome, right, is the human being gets high. Truly. Humans can get a sense of high out of feeling that, like, almost that amazed feeling of forgiveness when they know that there needs to be a level of effort and work put into something that's meaningful. So, like, by merit based, right, Trump is right when it comes to, like, colleges, when it comes to athletics, right? A lot of these things are very true. And we don't need to be disheartening women who have worked their butt off in their lane only to be beaten out by a man who has disconfigured his genitals. That is not approved by me, because what? The newly transitioned girl goes, now I want to be a track star. No, now you want to be a man posing as a woman to beat natural women because you actually have the physicality of a man. That's wrong. That's wrong. Another sign said something, the effect of the illegals. I need to know who is legal in this country because of a lot of reasons. The country's blood flow stems from taxes being paid. It is not fair, as I made the parable yesterday, if there are 100 students that are going to buy a present for their teacher. But if only 50 students are actually contributing, paying money for the present, well, then it's only those 50 students that are actually going to be voting for the present. In American society, we have a lot of the niceties that we have because of our tax system. It's a necessity. So then, by saying, okay, everyone who's here legally, who's paying taxes, everyone who's making sure they're not on welfare, they're taking care of their families, you don't get a pat on the head. You don't get a pat on the back. Instead, you are going to pay the bill for the other 50 kids. You see? So imagine then, like in the teacher parable, so the 50 kids, right, they all had to go to work. Meanwhile, the 50 who didn't put any money in, they didn't go to work. They didn't do anything, but they're still going to the pizza party. No, that's not fair. And then what that does do is that takes the wind out of the sails of the ambitious children. Human ambition is powerful. When it's done collectively, it's even more powerful. When human ambition is paired with righteousness and me as Elohim leading the charge, showing what the right ways to do things are, that's powerful. It's more powerful even than just having human sympathy. Guys, sympathy and empathy is a very weak approach to any and all situations. A lot of times it's an emotion of you're in an emotional point that you don't know what to do, or you don't have the backbone to do it yourself, so therefore you could not ever tell anyone else. You see what I mean? That goes back to the woman when put into the center, and the Pharisees are like, what do we do with her, right? And Yeshua's like, okay, here's a stone. Any one of you that are sin-free, come stone her. And they're all like, well, I did my own naughties, you know, I've done this, I've done that. He's like, exactly. So you all need to clean up your act first before you can even condemn anybody, right? And that was the point of that. It was not at all that Yeshua sided with the woman. Not at all. He actually gave her a very big chastisement, told her to, like, never do that again, and if she can agree to sin no more, and that she understands that the penalty for what she did was death, and that she should have been stoned. But there is mercy given to the kingdom for those that can self-reflect and identify their wrongs. That's the difference, right? The difference between someone who's willing to go to the courtyard saying, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent, but in fact they were not. That's called for stoning. Because they are still lying even when they're being directly approached. You see what I mean? So Yeshua provided mercy to the woman, because if he stoned her, he would have to have stoned all of the Pharisees with him. So the better course of action is to reteach everything to them, which again they did not want to learn. Very similar to the struggle I have now with the progressive Christian church, struggles with truth. They want to tell whatever their heart's version is that boosts the numbers in attendance, that fills up the money plate. And all these things have no actual, they have actually no real implication to the kingdom of heaven or cleaning up the earth. If I have liberal progressive Christians saying, again, fugazis, that's what I mean. Like, this is the fugazi. This is the fallen angels professing their all-dying, all-love to human women. When I, as their father and their God, say, guys, you are literally about to set in motion a chain of events that you could never comprehend the amount of harm you could potentially do. And very humanistically of the fallen angels, they get in my face and say, if you stop us, then you're tampering with our free will. you know, and then this same song and dance, right? And then I'm just a cosmic, like, chain maker, or whatever their old phrase was. The point is, I do not like human suffering. I do not like any of the problems that we currently have. But it is, humans are great at putting band-aids over things. You're great at painting over stuff, right? You're great at making something look good, but in reality it's not fixed. I'm the reverse of you. I pull out the ugliest, worst things right out in the open, and I stand there and look at it. I look at it. I look at that table and I go, it's got 8 different paint jobs on it. I need to sand all that crap off. Oh, it's got a broken leg. I'm going to have to cut it off, make a new one, and stick it on there. I'm looking at this table that it needs a complete 100% overhaul. Whereas progressive Christianity is like, just give me the 3-tabled, 8 paint jobbed table, and I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to love it. And it's like, well, one, you're loving and caring for something that's out of purpose, right? The table is never going to be suitable to put anything on, so it's a waste of space. Why don't instead you refurbish the table so it can get in purpose? The progressive Christian does not want to do that because they feel that their job is somehow appeasing the emotional components of humanity. That is not your job. True compassion is correction. Compassion and love and truth and all these things. My son comes home and goes, all right, Dad, I'm struggling with this. Son, you have my undivided attention. I'm going to help you become an overcomer. I'm going to assist you in your journey. I am never going to give up on you. I will never stop lecturing. I will never stop pestering until you reach the goals that your God has set before you. That is a fact. It may not look pretty, but you know what it will look like? It will look the closest thing to perfection can get, so long as they're on that path. But if we cave in and we give to substandard ways and means, then we're just perpetuating the same sin, the same problems the earth has been in torment of, right? Why do we have so many jihadists in the world? Because early Christianity is not real Christianity in the sense that I am Yahweh, I am by the book, I am righteous, set apart, and holy. That is the things in which I teach. That is how my creation is governed. Humanity as a species on the creation thus is supposed to do thy purpose, right? Early Christianity did not absorb any Persians or really any other tribes, because they are an older religious type of people that stem right from the lines of Ishmael. So I'm saying they already had inclinations to, besides worshiping me, they had Molech, they had a few different other like desert deities that were into like the blood sacrifices, like essentially their own like blood law. And then the thing is, then they come out with like cute Christianity. Well, they were never able to kind of get into that because they knew right off the bat, because they had 1,000 years more time than any Christian ever did, right? They did not lean into any of those types of teachings, right? Because, like, truly, the world needs its God. It needs its Elohim to lead it, to guide it, to train it, and then through the process, the humans get to see the fruit and they get to see the promises come to life, and then they get to have sweat equity put into the game, because, right, then you have the offshoots, I'm saying, of like Islamic and all these other things. I'm not trying to go into theology. I'm sticking on progressive Christendom. But I think I'm getting short on time, so I'm not sure if I'm done with the teaching. I think I'm going to do a pause, do a quick kid pickup, and then come back and regroup. And we're back. So it's about 1:51 after pickup, and then had lunch. So I'm going to try to round out today's video. I know we're a little long here at about an hour and 9 minutes. So on the way to get the kids. Asher and I were discussing the topic because it's what we do, right? I will develop a teaching, usually consult with her just to kind of see how fluid the understanding is. And she chimed in, with one of her own. And so Asher was teaching was if a child hits his or her parent, right, usually then a lesson on not hitting is in order whilst ceasing that behavior, right? And then obviously forgiving the child. But if the second time the behavior came, then there's going to be consequences, because there must be consequences to curb that behavior, or else the child believes it to be acceptable. So I felt that was very short, to the point, solid, as you can see, right? I have the full faith and confidence in my forever wife, the one I've had incarnations past, the one I have in heaven, and that is, she's my other half, because without her, right, I'm incomplete with my own teaching. And that's where I want to demonstrate to the husband and wife dynamic why it is so important. It truly is very important. And then there's a certain divinity that comes with being a human man and a human woman in holy matrimony, because that is one of the fundamental things that truly set humanity apart from the animal kingdom. See, most in the animal kingdom have no problem with seed spreading, because, right, they are a part of the creation, is like an artwork, right? And for humans to be a higher element, a higher being than just an animal, these are the principles that separate humans from the animal kingdom. Because again, it takes no self-restraint, it takes no thought to wait before having sex. It takes a lot of self-control and higher mind and discipline and righteousness to wait until your significant other, and to know the biblical promises that those come with. That is why I am pushing the things in which I am pushing, because I want humans to realize they are not animals. But if things are usually led by behavior, and they are, if humans go around just, plugging the mail into any receiving socket, then you're no better than an animal out in creation. You're no better than the fundamental task of putting seed, you see? And that is where those that have proclivities to do wrong, to do evil, have an animalistic framework. They need a lot more intensive teachings and workings with, from those that have pulled themselves out of the animalistic mind frame, out of the what an animal, right? When an animal dies, an animal dies. If a human acts like an animal, then it's going to be treated like an animal in its afterlife. If a human wants to move to a realm where there is nothing but divine beings, then you must act accordingly. No different than most of the human activities. It just begins to start breaking down, because spirituality, my religions, and who I am as God, the creator of these things, the breakdown happens when humans have faulty hearts and they do things because they don't understand who I am, what my plan is, what my creation can and can't do, and what the patterns are. So it's really easy for me as Elohim to look at churches in disgust, to look at them highly disappointed, because these churches are convincing humans that remaining in a primitive-like animalistic mindset is the pathway to human happiness. And I'm sorry, but what may be happy for the human may not be always what's best, right? As I've said, I have roses. I have to prune those roses. And the only way to get more buds, more flowers, thicker, more hardy stalks that can outlive the snow, that can outlive The heat, that doesn't come with having a shrimpy little rose bush. That's going to come with having a properly trimmed and cared for rose bush, right? Every human must be also his or her own gardener. Take regular inventory of yourselves, and when it is needed, when you are honest and you are open with yourself, a chastisement of your own doing will be the most powerful thing the human mind could actually endure. So these are actual things that I require from my churches, Christian and Jewish house both. And for the most part, the Jewish house has righteousness. I wouldn't say completed, because it's not something you could ever complete. It is an ongoing thing, like breathing. That would be like saying, when I'm done breathing, right? That's how righteousness is it doesn't turn off. It's a continuation, and it is a evolving effort to critique oneself. So I appreciated Asherah's teaching in that. I thought it was not only reassuring to me as her husband, but also reassuring to me as Elohim that, for lack of a better term, right, the earth's mother, the heavenly mother, right, she's got her bearings, she's got her wits, she knows what's going on, all while still keeping a corporate job. To me, that's a big load, and she walks gracefully still. So but I will try to round this out, because I have got to be out of here by about 2:20 for the next round of kid pickup. But so teaching, instructing, and correcting, those are walking a true biblical life and a purpose with me, God. Not memorizing biblical verses or making verbal oaths that you're saved. Because the fact is, if you're truly saved, then you would be out of sin. You would be out of sin. And like a person who went overboard on a ship, right? That person would need help, right? So imagine a ship, and then all the humans on the ship, right? The waves are going, but one person falls over. That person's the one who got wrapped up in sin, right? Well, so that person needs help, right? At that point, that person needs external help from somebody on the dock, the deck of the ship, right? And until that person is firmly back on deck, right? They're out of the water, firm grounded. And again, until they are back on solid ground, right? They're not saved. Doesn't matter if you're in the water and you scream, I'm saved, I'm saved, I'm saved, but you're in the water, you were never saved. You see? Because these are all actions, these are all verbs, as we were just talking about when it came to criminality. Is not a person, is not a race, it is a deed, it's what you do, right? Crime is something you do, not something you are. And walking a biblical path is not something that has a non-action. It isn't that you get a participation trophy for going to church and saying you're walking a godly path. That's false. That would be false teaching. And I have to look no further for case studies than my very own half-sister. As I've said on previous videos, her and I are virtually majorly estranged, and she leads a very sinful life, but yet she does not miss a Sunday service. But she could not, I'm literally God in the flesh, and yet she walks around quoting Bible verses, but she is not righteous, very sinful, very proud of her sin, but church is her hobby, and it makes her look good. And thus, being God in the flesh, and she claims to know me, but yet knows nothing about me or my principles. If you don't know anything about my character, my principles, my commandments, then you don't know me. And if you don't keep my commandments, then you do not love me. That is a fact. And, because I just so happen to be a life raft, a lifesaver for those that are overboard, right? But I'm more like the hand going over the rail, right? pulling you up off the ship. But in order for me to save anything or anybody, first that person must realize that they're drowning, right? It doesn't do the man overboard or woman overboard any good if they're in the water and they think that they're safe. As long as they're in that water, right, they're never going to be safe. So until they come to the realization that they need that, then that's where, the life raft is thrown. That's saying, hey, here's the 10 Commandments. This is the first step, right? Once you can grab the life raft, now you're going to grab my hand. I'm going to tell you how not to ever fall back into the water again. And then that person would pat me on the back and say, man, you're a real lifesaver. Thank you for teaching me how not to drown. Thank you for teaching me what to do when I did fall overboard. Man, you're a real lifesaver. You saved my life. You saved my life from drowning. Where once I was lost, now that person has been found. But that is only through righteous scrutinization of one's character. And it starts in every church. And churches, all churches, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Jewish, synagogue, everything from the highest self-appointed rabbis to the highest self-appointed pastors and to the lowest congregations that have about 2 people, if anyone shows up. It starts with personal character to a point that you're no longer being governed by sin or the primalistic animal that still resides in humanity, fighting through that barrier, and for some, fighting the barrier of your ancestry, which the fallen angels were very, very real. They were very, very real. And just like I, as Elohim, the chief deity of the heavens, right? Because I'm the first of all creation, and thus I am like the cosmic manager. But I, even I, possess the ability, just like the fallen angels, to descend into the earth plane. Now, we descend from an entirely different realm, a different dimension that humanity and Earth and your current solar system is in. And it is through transcendental spiritual birth, right, that I can put myself down on Earth as a human, but I'm not, again, we've been through this, I'm not human as a human is a human. I am an Elohim. I am a God. I am a, transcendental being. I have 2 homes, right? Heaven and earth. But the point is, animals, when humans act like animals, and you go against universal law or kingdom laws, then you are rejecting, by your own actions, by your own doing, you are rejecting your next chapter. You're rejecting the kingdom of heaven, because the kingdom of heaven is the destination you want to go. You don't want to continue to stay on a karmatic wheel and live life after life after life with different scenarios so you finally learn your lessons. The great news too is we have technology that is I keep using the word paramount. It's probably the wrong word for so many different phrases, but it is so important for people to use the technology for good stuff. Use it for research about biblical truths. Use it to find me, obviously, but use it to correspond with others around the entire world. Human beings can now communicate, not easily, super easy. Not just effective, face-to-face. You can have a face-to-face conversation with a human on the complete polar opposite of the planet, and you could have a direct conversation. I think humans sometimes fail to even look back at your own achievements and go, wow, we are pretty cool. Man, in so many ways we are godlike. You have unique imaginations. You have resources I've given you on the planet to make your dreams a reality. So my question is to humanity. Why do you all work so hard to make your nightmares reality? So, on my last note, this is not something it's not something I truly want to do, but I will do it. Limitedly. Within 10 miles of her home, Miss Nancy Guthrie is still alive, and angels are telling me the indicators point for her reunion with family. Archangel Michael tells me that if Pima County was to keep their net within 10 miles and go door to door, Archangel Michael says that they'll find her. They'll find her. Yeah, leave no stone unturned, but she's still alive. And she will be found. So I consider that to be closed, and I will spare the details of the criminal. You guys will see it for yourselves. But with that, I hope everybody can meditate on today's teaching. And please, I feel that I don't waste my time teaching the world. So I hope the world doesn't waste my time in failing to spread the message with every opportunity you can. Because if you truly love one another, then you're never going to be afraid to help each other. And that starts at the fundamental principles of letting humans know that they're not animals. They have purpose. They have a divine essence. They are, in fact, the closest representation of me, God, but upon the earth. So make me proud. Speak truth always, and righteousness is your sure, narrow way. So have a great Thursday. We will see you here tomorrow.